You can call me X, you can call me Y, you can call me Z. You can come and try. Na 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 na.
You know you love me. XOXO. Gossip Girl.
Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristen.
This is So I'm watching Gossip Girl, season 1, episode 7.
Victrola.
This is a good episode. I remember being like into this one when it aired. So much so that the Soho Dolls song Stripper, I downloaded both it
Don't touch the girls, don't kiss the girls. I have the right to play the girls.
and the remix.
Yeah.
And they were on our like just kind of hanging out playlist for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. This is
we got mileage.
This is my first favorite episode
Is it?
of this show.
Okay. So Chuck is trying to actually branch out into proper business.
Yeah.
And he is just actually interested and passionate about it himself. But he's also trying to sort of like win over / impress his dad. It's a combination. It's very smart because as the episode posits, burlesque was very popular in the 2000s.
Yeah.
There was a resurgence starting with the Pussycat Dolls around like 2003 and before the musical group. Like I remember when it was like the underground club out of the Viper Room, I want to say.
I think the Viper Room closed down after River Phoenix died.
I think, well, then it was maybe whatever. I think that's true. It was born out of Robin Anton's garage with Christina Applegate and Carmen Electra as founding members. I was obsessed with the Pussycat
You really were.
Dolls.
I always forget that about you.
Again, before the musical group. I like the musical group fine, but the actual dolls themselves, and it was right before cell phones had really taken off, so celebrities still would go out and about. There was like nightlife, and there would be Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire in the audience. And they would get Gwen Stefani, Brittany Murphy, Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. Like they did, like all of these actual A-list people would do it. This turned into an oral history of burlesque. And
the Pussycat Dolls specifically.
I think it's sort of several things were sort of reborn around the turn of the century, and burlesque it's still very present.
Yeah.
Not like it was then. And so
It had a heyday.
That's actually very savvy of Chuck to kind of combine.
Yeah, he's not an idiot. He's just...
Well, that's
like,
a plot of this episode.
Yeah, he's not an idiot. He's just like overindulged.
So the thing is, of course, because Bart, like once he realizes he's not impressed and like...
Well, he realizes like 30% of it and he's not impressed. Once he realizes the whole thing, then he's impressed. Although then Chuck steps in it a different way by like having told on Chuck to Lily.
Bart.
Bart, yeah.
I didn't remember it all happening in this episode, though. Because, like, by the end of the episode...
We're watching more than one thing right now where too many things happen per episode. It's a lot. Like 5 things happen in this episode.
So he comes around and one of several pivots comes around in this episode. The other 2 main plots are Blair and Nate. They still have not had sex.
No,
correct? And then
Nate has had sex with at least Serena. Blair has not had sex with anyone. Dan has not had sex with anyone.
And then Dan and Serena. And it's interesting. We're pretty passionate about depictions of healthy sexuality. It was never all that like precious to me. I'm sort of like, I mean, you just kind of start doing it and you figure it out. Like, I'm not one of these, like, it needs to be, like, I would like, if there was like a big to-do made.
Oh.
Like candles and sheets.
Okay.
And like...
Well, he needed new sheets. The sheets are not, the sheets were necessary. He had football sheets. The sheets were necessary. Well, so which one's Cedric? The Cabbage Patch doll? Okay.
That's not that bad. Everybody disses Cedric, and I don't think it's that big of a deal.
He is like a 16-year-old boy that still has...
It's sitting on his shelf.
I don't know. It's a little weird.
Really?
A Cabbage Patch doll? A cabbage.
It's a childhood heirloom. Like,
it's not an heirloom. It's a child. It's like a comfort item.
It's on his shelf. If it's like under his, like if he's like sleeping with it like this, that's a little.
I think it's specifically the fact that it's a Cabbage Patch doll. It's not even just like a stuffed animal. It's a Cabbage Patch doll. It's different. It's
gotta go.
It's creepy.
Cedric's gotta go.
We don't need to like incinerate him, but he should go in the closet. But yeah, regardless, I guess I don't know. Because there wasn't like a huge to-do made about it for me, but I also made the amount of to-do I wanted from it. I did it. Well, I was in charge of that scenario.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying, where like for me, it's more Into the Woods, like excited and scared, and like a brave new world, like territory, like, and I mean, there's a fair more amount or larger amount of blurring lines from my perspective
Sure.
than from the average. Yeah. But I don't know. It just like walking into that setup, it gives me very Jessica Simpson's Sweetest Sin.
Ugh.
Yeah, precisely.
That I don't like.
Although I do find it interesting that like Serena, that was weird. Serena is like the worldly one in this. And
which is why I think the whole to-do is actually kind of nice. And she touches on it in this episode because she's like, I don't think anyone else even like looked at my face. So like, this is super nice. And so it's like cute that he's doing it for her, even though it's really for him.
But he's also not like, it's addressed, but he's not hung up on it. Like, and certainly not in a gross or unhealthy way.
Hung up on having sex, or hung up on the fact that she's more worldly?
That she's more experienced.
He gets hung up on it. He gets there.
Does he?
Yeah.
Because I was gonna be like, he's worried from a place of like, how will I measure up, and not from a place of she's tainted.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, which is good.
Yeah. I keep on thinking, maybe. Because they do not have sex in this episode, and I cannot remember when they do finally have sex.
Well, I was going to say, I remember being in a few episodes, but granted, several things in this episode, I remember being in a few episodes. Yeah,
so it could be any time.
And then we still have it's so funny, like, because I remember so many aspects of this show, and revisiting it, I'm expecting to come back with a different clarity.
No.
And like, because Nate just doesn't stand a chance. His mother is worthless. Worse than his father, honestly. Worthless.
Yeah.
Like, she cannot get away from him fast enough in every scene that they're at. And he's like, why won't you look at my face? And it's like,
he's like Serena having sex over there.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
He tells her, he's like, they were dad's drugs. I am not going down for this. It was dad's drugs. And then she's like, I don't understand. And I was like, that he was so clear. And so he was like, I saw dad buying drugs yesterday. And still, she says, the lengths you'll go to stay out of trouble.
Well, she also has this like battered woman fragility that
she really does.
I don't want or need that in this show. But there's just very sort of like, I'm surprised she's not like, we have to have dinner ready before your father gets home. You know how he gets.
Well, she does.
Like,
so when he finally convinces her that the drugs belong to the captain, she's like, he's just been under a lot of stress lately. And you're like, Anne, please.
And so I forget his dad's name, but
they just call him the captain. I think he has one, but I don't know.
Still
Howie. His name is Howie. Horrible.
They're still in the process of pimping him out to let's be honest, Eleanor Waldorf.
Eleanor wants her fucking mitts on that diamond more than Blair does.
Well, true. And so that's one of the things, because it's like, I remember having like a great deal of fondness towards Eleanor, but she's like willfully turning a blind eye to a lot of things that I think would be pinging her red flag receptors. Yeah. Because I also refuse to believe she's never been in the presence of a person who's coked out of their mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, she is just sort of like letting everything happen. Like, she's not like, are you all right?
And it might be because this is episode 7, but it's like to a place where it feels out of character.
Oh, okay.
For her, for how I remember her.
Sure. I think there's growth with Eleanor. I think at the beginning she's still kind of, we haven't had that first Thanksgiving episode with like Blair.
She's still she's very singular in a way that like I think she gets much deeper as we go. We have the fallout from the masquerade ball.
Yeah.
Nate is doing his best with Jenny.
That was the quickest pivot I've ever seen him make to my memory. Wow.
With the chocolate.
He's like giving Jenny chocolates and he's like, I need you to just help me. And Blair is immediately right there going, help you with what? And he's like, oh, just
come up with a better
coming up with a better apology. Give them these chocolates. And Blair is just still a bitch because she's like, well, I prefer the gold collection, but these are so sweet.
Well, she's performing still.
A little, yeah.
And that's like, because there was a handful of times, and I want to get into it. I don't know that we will yet, but it's like, I'm like 90% on Blair's side with all of this stuff. And you keep, and it surprises me, but you kind of keeping like, well, what do you mean?
So when she said, when she said to Jenny, oh God, I don't even remember exactly how she said it. Like what they were talking about.
Don't test me.
No, not that. That stuff's fine. But she was like, "Oh, did you really think you like could stand a chance with Nate? Do you think you could blah blah?" And it's like she's putting it on the like, because you're inferior to me. There's no way you could possibly have a shot at this.
But I for me, it's like it's that thing that we've talked about a lot when we were writing Fairy Tale, where it's like Blair is largely behaving the way that she's been conditioned and everyone has sort of agreed she's going to behave.
Yeah, I'm not.
And then there's a handful of times when like the game shifts a little bit and you can tell, is she like, okay,
she's calibrating.
Do I adapt to this new factor or do I double down with what I've always done?
Yeah.
And so she's in a place now where she's kind of like, you're going to attempt to double down a few times before you learn to.
Sure. And again, I'm not faulting her for it, but it's like, she's not being a bitch, where it's like, she says like Jenny says Nate kissed me and like, I just, blah, 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 whatever. And Blair's like, oh, as if you could be the one who's like a problem.
I mean, it's hazing, which
I know it's still bitchy.
Sure. I guess I'm not arguing that she's not being a bitch, but my point is that
she is doing what she's been trained to do.
But for that is so openly like where you stand. She's not being deceptive or backstabby. And there's so many times where she looks Jenny dead in the eyes and was like, here are the rules.
Yeah.
And she literally was like, okay, you've proven you can do this.
Yeah.
If you keep doing it, it'll piss me off.
Mm-hmm.
And so she very much is like she lets Jenny know where she stands.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, because she dismisses Jenny for good in this episode, which, I mean...
It doesn't stick.
No, and I mean, I think in the moment she meant it, but it's like she had to process because she's being fucking screwed over. Yeah. Like, she's being betrayed by Nate and indirectly by Serena, but...
Well, at least that's the thing is, blessedly this time, Serena does not...
Factor
in at all, because like Jenny takes the heat and she's like, it was me. I was wearing her mask and he thought I was her. But yeah, Nate is like not doing the right thing.
But it's like Blair is being so cool about the situation, and Nate is not meeting her in the middle.
No, not even like close to the middle. Not even close.
And so that's what I mean, where I'm like, considering that Blair has this reputation for being fiercely bitchy and vicious, I'm like, she's being very even keeled. Like,
I think it's mostly warranted.
Yeah.
Especially right now, I think it's mostly warranted because her life is literally falling down around her.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, even she's like, she sees the captain getting arrested and she goes to talk to Nate later and she's like, why didn't you talk to me?
She's begging him.
All I want is for you to be in this relationship with me and you just literally cannot like do it. And she's just like, okay, bye. And she takes his town car to go to Victrola.
He's just like, and I understand that his life is falling apart as well, but it's like, from her perspective, he's worthless.
Yeah.
Because it's like, he's not even banging her. It's like, he's not even providing.
And the reason why is because he's not telling her these things about his life. If they could, if their lives were falling apart together, like they kind of are, it would be different. But,
Bart and Lily are like a subplot that goes on and off for a while. Bart, I mean, I feel like being handsy comes with the territory.
It's just like, stop touching your employees.
Yeah, that's more so than anything. That's
don't
that.
Touch your employees.
It's like if he's being handsy with a burlesque dancer, it's like whatever, or like a stripper or whatever.
But it's like he was having a meeting and then like very
honk.
like handsily helping her into the car.
Although she ends up being the one that goes to bat for Chuck,
which is great, but yeah.
And I did like her little, like, this episode, she doesn't come back.
I don't think so.
But I do love her whole, like, I'm tired of helping people get rich. I'm ready to be the rich man. I do love we get 2 like weird little sex fantasies in this that are very funny. They feel slightly ahead of their time.
Yeah.
I think if this show were on several years later, they would and a little bit like rote. Like I think they'd be a little bit jazzier.
Sure.
But it was funny. I don't really recall that kind of gimmick continuing.
It doesn't really to my memory.
Yeah.
But it's like we're not really in this specific scenario again, so it doesn't really need to.
So Chuck drunkenly tells Lily that his dad's still like being handsy, and she's like, ugh. And then she goes and
to see Rufus.
Has like an evening with Rufus where they watch the stars in the
they lay under their installation.
Oh, Vanessa continues.
Vanessa makes Jenny dumb. Because this is now the second time that Jenny has done something ill-advised on the advice of Vanessa she's gone to Hudson to go tell her mom it's time to come home. And if my memory serves, in the next episode, Allison is home and it causes problems. It's not great. They just are going to get divorced. They need to get divorced.
I said to you while we were watching it, and I was like, I'm so curious to understand what the writer's intentions were. Did they actually expect for us to empathize with Vanessa?
Like, am I supposed to care about the fact that Vanessa is in love with Dan? Because I don't.
Because she barges in. She's
through the window again.
Smugly.
Yeah.
And judges the shit out of Serena.
Yeah.
And then does it again through the door. Like, she just keeps showing up. And like insisting.
And entering at her own will when it's just like, and Dan even is like, so what you do is you knock and then I'll tell you if you can come in. Yeah.
And then like, because your point about the Jenny thing where she's like, well, is this about Nate and Blair or is this about your parents? And you were like, none of your business.
Yeah.
Like.
Out of your mouth.
It's barely Jenny's business and they're her parents.
Take the Humphreys out of your mouth. It's just like, ugh.
So I don't know. Like I said, I'm very curious because this show introduced like Georgina Sparks exists solely to be an obstacle.
Yeah.
And they make jokes out of it.
Yeah.
But I'm so curious because you said maybe it's the books, but from my memory, this deviates pretty heavily from the books.
Yeah, I don't really know. I just was like, maybe because I think Dan and Vanessa actually have more of a past in the books, if I'm remembering right.
It's just like in the modern era, you know, as far as love triangles go, we've got Twilight. You know, we have the whole Jacob and Edward, and the general consensus is Edward. Jacob sucks, but it's like
Jacob doesn't suck. It's just
no, I know, thing. But this is like. Because it seems like they're trying to make a love triangle, but instead of Vanessa just not being right for Dan, she's lobbing grenades left and right.
She's like actively terrible.
Like if Jacob just shows up and was like, are you sorry about your dead mom? Like, it's just like, what? Huh? Like.
Her mom's not dead. That is funny. No, it would be like instead of Edward and Jacob, if it were like Edward and then Cam Jagandit from the first one. It's like there's clearly a better option. There's one that's way better than the other.
I don't know. It's very strange. I'm curious to know if this was all intentional and who was in on what, because it is glaring.
Yeah, for me too.
Because I remember hating her, but it's like,
well, and so here's the thing for me is I remember hating her sort of based on Jacob Clifton's reviews because he talks mad shit about Vanessa. He hates Vanessa too. And he is constantly like, she's so rude. She's just like portaling into their apartment at all hours. She's just like waiting there like a gremlin outside their apartment to like enter at the most inopportune time. And it's just like, I don't know. So I think like I was wondering if that was coloring it for me, and it turns out no, because I haven't read those reviews in years.
We just didn't have the words when we were younger.
She just is like, it's so offensive and it's so out of her bounds as like even a close friend of the family. It's so out of bounds. So
the last note I have is I kind of wish that drag queen at Victrola was a thing.
Yeah.
Because that's a very bold character to dip in and out.
Just right back out. And then Blair and Chuck have sex in the back of his limo.
So do they? They were just making out from what we saw, but okay.
They 100% have sex. It's like a big plot for the rest of the season.
I thought so. I just couldn't quite remember.
Yep.
Okay, well, that was episode 7. And we're going to go watch episode 8.
Yay. Bye. If I was wearing something sexier under here, I would take it off, but I'm not.
You know you love me. XOXO. Gossip.